Welcome to the Adam Bursztein Contract to Close podcast. This is episode 2. Today we'll be looking at the buyer's perspective. Adam, is South Florida a buyer's or seller's market right now?
Seller's market.
And in this type of market, what are the buyer's agent's responsibilities to their client?
Okay. Excellent question. Thanks for doing this podcast number 2. Before we get started, because you and I know what the topic's about, and because we want this content to last forever, right now, because we're in the COVID, mid-COVID, post-COVID, it has shifted to a seller's market for single-family homes, and it seems like it's a buyer's market for condominiums. So it was that first question. I said yes for sellers because it is, but it's like a two-headed type of system we have down here. And then my responsibilities to my buyers, number 2, is to make sure that these sales that we do comp out and appraise at the correct number. That would be my first, and we're signing more or trying to appraisal contingency agreements. So, we noticed that in appraisals are coming a little tighter now too. So we think banks are definitely talking to the appraisers, us as agents. We never get to talk to appraisers anymore, but we've been noticing we're having to get multiple appraisals, and they're coming in at different numbers as well.
How much faster or slower are, let's look at the single family homes and then the condos, how much faster or slower are they staying on the market compared to January, February?
January, February, there could have been houses that were sitting on the market for 180 days and sellers were reducing prices. Since March, where everybody thought it was going to be a buyer's market and that there was going to be a real onslaught at this point, it actually switched. There was a renewed sense in home ownership, I felt, from what I read and I understand. Once again, going back to space, size, and the seller's market now, I am walking in, I've been in the business since 2000, 2001, with contracts in my hand, and we're getting 10 offers on top for single family homes. And they're on the market before they're coming soon, they're already almost gone.
So if someone was coming from out of town, having to relocate for work, or they're an out-of-country investor, should they be prepared to put in an offer without ever seeing the home in person?
Absolutely. If they really have the intent to purchase, for whatever their motivation is, if they're serious, they should put a contract in Florida. You don't need money once you sign a contract, normally within 3 days. So the earnest money deposit, we can always schedule that. You have ways to get out of contracts, which are home inspections and appraisals. So in order to kind of tie up the property, if you will, we want to put an offer in, give them the best offer, and then try to see where the property goes from there.
Okay, let's say it is someone local. What's the open house experience like for a buyer right now? Or are there no open houses? Is it all virtual?
No, there's open houses and there's virtual. Really the problem that we're running into right now is very low inventory. Prices are running up, and school has begun. So things have slowed down a hair, but we're just having a lack of inventory. Things are getting sold before you can even get to an open house, basically.
There was a recent Forbes article detailing a shift from buyers caring about location to buyers focusing more on the deal. Quote, what is most cost effective is what always matters most to a home buyer. And in the midst of an economic recession with mortgage rates hitting rock bottom, getting a good deal is easier than ever, end quote. So instead of having to live close to work, a buyer might be picking a condo or a home with maybe more community amenities, perhaps a home office. Have you noticed this with your clients, or are people still very much focused on location in South Florida?
Once again, awesome question. 2 things. Before pandemic, that was a great quote. I think it's changed. We do have great low rates, and that's great. And banks are moving ahead. Um, some things in the jumbo loan market, 500,000 and above loans, are a little tighter right now. Things underneath 500,000 are moving a little easier, but we're getting deals done regardless. Um, what's important to buyers and what's great about Florida, regardless, is our lifestyle component that we have. Condominiums have amenities like I've never seen before, some of the coolest stuff, virtual realities, skating rinks, bowling alleys. So whatever the client wants, some of these builders that we work with and developers, they're knocking it out of the park, hands down. Number two, single family homes. I said this in our first podcast, but I'll repeat it quickly. Home offices are huge, gyms and pools and space. So if you can find those, I personally live in Davie, Southwest Ranches area. So it's the country of Broward County, and it's a horse country, and we own acreages. So that's always something that is always interesting to buyers here in South Florida.
Have you been working with any buyers who started their process before the pandemic and have their desires changed, or have things been moving pretty quickly for you on that end?
So every deal has its own DNA, and every buyer, I've lost deals. We had foreclosure I worked very hard on in a condominium. We were getting the buyer a great price. Then the pandemic happened. We renegotiated to a better price. And then it came time to close. The buyer was scared and pulled out. Ultimately, the foreclosure sold to somebody else. So that was happening. But everything is really deal specific. I can find great deals, and I feel bad for my buyers who have to pay a high premium right now. When I represent a seller, I'm trying to get the most money for them, and when I represent a buyer, I want the best deal that we can possibly negotiate.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but in general, what should, or maybe we can dive in a little bit more in depth, does a buyer need to do to prepare themselves to get a win when it comes to purchasing a home in Miami right now?
What does a buyer have to do to get a win?
Yes.
Just getting it under contract is a win right now, honestly. We're being outbid in the market from 500,000 to $1 million plus. Houses that couldn't sell for $2.5 million that were sitting on the market. Those sellers are now capitalizing on the market, and buyers are happily paying from New York, from Chicago, from abroad, nice size, big homes. So the market is moving. I mean, it's just, you got to look at everything specific and see where your budget is. And then we dive deep into that.
So the inventory is so low at certain price points that you're getting involved in bidding wars almost every time?
In the single family home market, yes, sir. In the condo market, different story. We're selling units that had been on the market for a while, so very blessed to have that happen. And we're also finding good deals for our investors in the condominium market, from Miami almost through Fort Lauderdale and south. So we can find it in condos. Every building is specific.
What happens next after you submit an offer and you know you're in a bidding war? What's the next step for the client? What's the next step for you?
Not overpaying and not saying too much, to the other agent, to be honest with you, or whoever's on the other side. You have to be very savvy in how you write your contracts. You want to put your best foot forward, but you want to show your whole hand. And we try to do it that way.
So are you having a conversation with the client, something like, this is what they're asking, we want to put in an offer for a couple grand more, but we're also going to be willing to put in a couple more on top of that?
It's both. I mean, I go and I make a relationship with the seller's agent. I talk to him. I tell him about my buyer. I try to see if there's a good fit there. And then I talk about comps. I'm always knowledgeable. I go in, I do my research, and I tell my buyer, right now, the comps aren't going to work out. You're going to overpay for a property. And I've had some responses from other sellers who I've sold their house, and then they bought another house and they said, hey, I'm selling my house at top dollar, and I'm kind of buying a house at top dollar, and I feel like it's a wash. And that took a lot of pressure off me, because I always worry about that. I always want to make sure that my customer is happy. and that they get the service that I want to give them. That's my ultimate goal.
Besides having to overpay, is there something, any sort of trend that you see happening in terms of what buyers are willing to give up when it comes to buying a home right now?
Yeah. And I don't like the word overpay because it's that's too strong of a word, but the market is hot right now, and we're fighting with appraisals. Most seller agents are getting very tough, and they're doing things that are not advantageous to a buyer, which I try to defend a buyer to my highest standards. So we don't want to remove appraisal contingencies. We don't want to take away inspection periods. We don't want to close in 2 weeks unless we're cash buyers. So I have a lot of experience, and I always put myself in the shoes of the buyer or the seller. And I try to make that win-win.
Is there a neighborhood that was kind of getting ready to be the next it neighborhood that might have kind of been accelerated by the demand on the low inventory?
Everything that is a single family home in South Florida, from Broward to Dade to Palm Beach, has seen a great influx of appreciation and buyer activity. So I could name off every neighborhood. I could tell you Southwest Ranches. I could tell you Aventura. I could tell you Biscayne Park. I just drove 60 miles north today, past Wellington, which is a huge equestrian community, even to something more rural in Florida, and saw development and opportunities. So the market is awesome in Florida right now. I got to be honest with you.
Who are the buyers that you're working with most often? Are they local? Are they looking to upgrade? Are they looking to downsize? Who are you dealing with the most often?
I'm fortunate to work with a lot of different, but prior to the pandemic, a lot of our customers were international based, because in my office we speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese, French. So we have a lot of international, because we're having a hard time in South Florida with COVID, getting international people to the market. Which has been a great change for me. I'm working with a lot of people from New York, Connecticut, Chicago, California. I'm working next week. I just got a great referral from a gentleman who's living in California, and he was first in New Jersey. So we're getting a lot. It's great. It's all here in the U.S.
What has been the hardest conversation you've had with a buyer over the last 4 or 5 months?
With a buyer, honestly, I apologize to the buyer that they're buying in this market right now. A lot of buyers really thought, and it still may come true, or hopefully it doesn't, but will the bubble pop, and is there a bubble? So if you want a home in South Florida right now, you're going to pay a premium for it. If you can sit and rent and then see what happens and buy, if that works for you, then we explore that option too, and we've put some people into some really nice rentals for the next 12 months. So whatever my client needs. I get a lot of good leads from all over, and I talk to people that are retiring here. I talk to investment people here, second home, and really I just try to be like a relocation specialist for that niche.
Beyond the home office, a pool, a home gym, what has been the most interesting request so far from a buyer?
I deal with people who have equestrian needs. So a house with a beautiful barn, but also very modern in style. So we have some communities out here that cater. So, and then of course, like indoor basketball courts or outdoor sports courts, putting greens and putting ranges and things like that. So I get to do a lot of fun stuff in the single family home market. In the condo market, like I was saying, there's some great lifestyles. So a friend of mine just purchased in a building in Sunny Isles. I mean, they have virtual reality Indy race car, like the full simulator, golf, one unit that does multiple things, besides a lot of other amenities, plus the oceanfront lifestyle.
Adam, next week we're going to discuss the seller's perspective, but before we let you go, where can we find you on social, on the internet?
Of course, you can always call me, Adam Bursztein, 305-409-7556. That's my direct cell. We also have equityadvisorteam.com. That's our website. I work for Compass, great company. I have my own team. And then you can always find me online at Equity Advisor Team and things like that. So that's how you find me. But I'm always working. I'm always around. And I had so much fun doing this. I'm sorry it's over already.
Adam, thanks so much. We're looking forward to next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.